Okay, well, the time is 10:01. What better time to get started than now? It looks like we have about 50 people on here. Thank you guys for being here, everyone. I know it is 10 a.m. is not always the best time, but we're going to do our town halls at 10 a.m. primarily because, well, they're all virtual, so it's not as hard to jump in on the town halls. And at the same time, um, they're recorded, so anybody can watch them at any time. Um, but anyways, moving forward, let's go ahead and begin. And I do want to say, and I'll encourage you to, give me one second, just lost my screen. I do want to encourage you to turn your cameras on if you want to. I know we have a lot of people on here, and I like to look at people and see our parents. I understand if you don't want to or you can't, but awesome. There we are. There's our parents. Welcome, everybody. It's so good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Hey, Jen. I see our PTA people. Wendy. Hey, Laura. Catherine. Foundation representing. Garland popping in and driving. I love it. Well, let's get started. Let's do it. So we are here for a reason. We are at our first town hall of the for the phase 2 return and learn. And it is past 10 o'clock. So let's get started. Before we begin, I do want to give just let you know that this will be a high-level overview. A high-level overview meaning that really our town halls are going to get progressively more detailed as we move along throughout the month of January. You're going to learn a little bit about that and why that is the case. But the purpose of this town hall is to help answer really any burning questions you may have to the best of our ability, but then also to make sure that our parents and our community understands the return and learn timeline that's been established by APS. And we'll take a look at that and we'll review some of the key slides that Dr. Herring and APS presented to us last week or a week and a half ago. Okay. I do want to also just give some shout outs and thank you to you all, to our parents, first and foremost, for being there and for sticking with us and for being teachers and handling home life and jobs and students and learning. We recognize that this is not an easy job for anybody. So I always have to give shout outs to parents because you're managing lots of different, you're juggling. We get that. We know that. So thank you to our parents for all you're doing. And I do appreciate that because we know it's not easy. I got to thank our staff, right? We got to thank our teachers. We have a few that may be on here today, but they are rocking and rolling, continuing with the focus of virtual instruction until we return on January 19th, return to in-person learning on January 19th. They will be virtual throughout the month of January, but the teachers are doing an incredible job. I want to thank them. I appreciate them. And I want to thank our admin. They don't get a ton of thank yous either, but we have an awesome support group of admin that are on here today. Miss Small, Miss Ekper, Mr. Hudson, Miss Lamb. None of this could be done without them. It takes a lot of planning. Everything we are doing right now is virtual. So any meeting we have, any plans to return for in-person learning, everything we are doing is being done through Zoom. There is still nobody in our buildings. So it makes it challenging, but to have a team like this and an admin team like this in their brains and putting it all together, it makes it doable. So we're confident in our plan that we're going to present to you. And I want to thank them. I want to thank our entire community for the outpouring of food and support that came in yesterday. Wow, that was a lot, a little more than we had expected, but we managed it. It was awesome. I mean, within 30 minutes, every bin was overfilling. So we were getting food up until like 3 o'clock. I think I had the operation feed people tell me that, I think that was more food than any other school had done throughout the food drive. So awesome job for that. And thank you. Rain doesn't help the matters, but we made it work. We got it inside. So big shout out to Fran Egan, who's on our Go team, for organizing that, for putting it together, for supporting our students. So thank you for that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We are in the midst of Spirit Week, by the way, holiday Spirit Week. I took my my tacky sweater off because I wanted to look a little more professional, but I don't know why. I probably just should have left it on. But I'll have it on for our school dance today. Don't forget that we want to see your students at 11:45. We're having our holiday virtual dance. The kids love it. I don't know if you've ever been able to see it, but like they are like all over the place. It's awesome to see. So DJ Hudson will be on the ones and twos at 11:45 today. And then tomorrow, let me just remind you again that we will be ending the instructional day at 11 a.m. to allow for our staff to make their way to school, where they will be clearing out their mailboxes. They'll be collecting all of the awesome gifts and everything that have been brought to them and is piling up in our offices. We'll be treated to a really special lunch from the PTA. So thank you to them. And then we will be doing our drive-through at the primary center from 12 to 1 p.m. So we've shortened that time. So please come and wave goodbye to your teachers and have a great holiday. So today we're going to talk about our Return and Learn. It's the first of 3 of our town halls. I want to reiterate that each town hall is going to get progressively more detailed. So you are not going to learn what grade level numbers are going to look like today. And we're not going to be talking about the amount of students returning, how that's going to look, but I will be able to shed some light on some of the work that we've been doing to prepare for our students to return. So we're going to talk about the district communication and our school timeline. I do want to touch upon our intervention program, our site-based intervention, because it's been awesome. And I think it's important for our community and parents to know what's been happening there. I want to briefly touch upon asynchronous Wednesdays. We're going to touch upon the intent to return dashboard. We're going to talk about our capacity dashboard and some of the work we've been doing to look at social distancing within classrooms and how many students can fit into a classroom. We're going to highlight some of our safety and mitigation strategies because those are set and those are important. And we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk briefly about the slide that was presented on the spring and summer remediation, just to make sure that parents are aware of that. We'll do closing and some questions. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. Feel free to type a question into the chat box if you have it. The chat box is public, so whatever is put into that, everybody will be able to see it. Also, please keep in mind that we do not have a million people monitoring the chat box. So we can only handle a certain amount of questions, but we do have our awesome admin in here that will be typing some answers in there. If you would like a question addressed to the entire group, I'm going to ask you to just direct message me and I will read it and then I can address that for the good of the group. Most likely the questions that we pull off of our chat today will go into an FAQ and be put on our website to make sure that everybody has access to those questions as well. Okay, well, let's get started. So I want to highlight really quickly our communication strategy at Brandon. This is kind of a high-level overview of what will be happening in APS and then also at our school. We did have a typo yesterday in the B-mail, and I apologize for that. I typed quickly and I missed that. But I put that students will return on January 4th. That is not true. Our students will return on January 5th. So you will have off from Saturday all the way up until January 4th, where they will return for virtual learning on January 5th. So we want all of our students back and logged in, ready to go on January 5th. January 4th is actually a teacher planning day. We'll be meeting with our staff and continuing our planning for our return and learn. So take note of that, please. That's January 5th. I also want you to know that continue to read the B-mail. I really try and highlight all of the important parts and things that you need to know in the B-mail. So continue to read that. We are leaning very heavily on our Go team. As soon as we come back in January, we'll be right in the middle of budget season and strategic planning. So we have a whole nother obstacle to tackle, but definitely give shout outs to the Go team. We have not had a lot of public comment this year, so be on the lookout. If there's public comment and you want to share something and you want us to know about something, that is your time to talk at a public forum. I don't have the date for our next Go team meeting, but there will be one in January and we'll have several in February as well. So just be on the lookout for that. Our communication plan is on the right. It's a timetable. It has everything you really need to know. And I'm just going to talk about it really quickly. We are at 12/17 right now. 12/21, our intent to return window closes. Make sure that we have all of our intent to returns submitted by that date, which is Monday. I do want you to know that staff can apply for telework up until January 4th. That's another reason why we're not able to finally solidify what our plan will be right now. because we still have windows open for teleworking and intent to return. I will be meeting with teachers on January 4th to talk about some individual class plans and some of the things that we have. I just want you guys to know that. I'll be meeting with the whole grade levels and all of our staff on that first asynchronous Wednesday of January, January 6th. We'll have our second town hall, a much more detailed town hall around class capacity, sizes, teachers, all of that on January 7th. It's a big one because that's when the intent to return has been closed and the teleworking window has been closed. So all of our teachers will return to in-person instruction starting January 19th. They will be teaching virtually on January 19th until our phased-in approach begins for K2 on January 25th, and then for 3-5 on February 1st. So this will be posted on the website. I think it should already be up there. If it's not, we'll get it up there just to make sure that you understand these dates and just understand that we do return from winter break on January 5th. A couple questions that have popped up really quickly for me in the text box, private chats. I just want to remind you that you can shoot me a question if you have it, and I'll address it with the whole group, or you can type it in the chat box and somebody can answer it for you. Question was, what are the odds that students will be back in school? And I will just say that I'm not an odds maker. I don't have that answer. I can tell you that we are serious about our kids coming back. APS wants our students back in the building. We are full on steam ahead planning for a K-5 return on our phase-in dates, and that's all I can say about that. So I'm very confident in it. I feel confident in it. But, I'm not an odds maker, so I'm not going to be able to promise anything. But the goal is, and we're going to talk about this, that we do know that community spread is not the only determining factor for students to return to in-person learning now. And it's important to note that we're also now looking at mitigation strategies. So as we discussed today, just note and take note of the mitigation strategies that we're implementing, because that is going to be the determining factor on whether or not we can return students to school, with community spread as also another factor. And then another question I had is, what is the deadline for the decision on returning to school? I actually don't have that. And I know that people want to know, like, when's that cutoff date? And I don't think that there can be a cutoff date. I'm not sure yet. I can tell you that as we move throughout the month of January, we are going to have to know if this is actually, if this is happening and not the day before. But I don't have that answer for you. If I get that, I'll let you know. On the left over here, you can see that I did post the Atlanta Public School website that's going to give all of the reopening information that you need. So please just make sure that you're checking that website periodically. You can go on there, read Dr. Herring's blog. There's lots of good information on that and lots of answers that I'm not able to provide at the school level that hopefully you can get from there. Okay, so let's talk about site-based intervention just really quickly. I don't know if you've known this. We have not done a ton of PR around this for a couple different reasons. I understand that we had to be very selective about the students that we wanted to come back into our school. And, we had to make some tough decisions, but we were very, very happy with how it went. We got 140 kindergartners in our building. They've already met their teachers. They've made their way around the school. They've got tours. They've had some interventions. And it was really, really great to see. They didn't all come the same day. Every kindergartner had one Tuesday and one Thursday they were able to come. But shout out to our kindergarten teachers who took on that role, who still taught their classes while kids were in the rooms. So that was awesome. So I want to thank them for that. We also had 51 of our students. We also had 51 of our students that joined from kindergarten through fifth grade that came every Tuesday and Thursday. And those were students that had learning accommodations and learning modifications through an IEP for special education, or through what's called a TPC for our language learners or ESOL students. And then our students that have maybe an SST or in the SST process, and our intervention students. They came every day. They met with their teachers every Tuesday and Thursday, and they did a great job on that. We also had SEL and wellness interventions for students that needed it. That was led by Ms. Whitaker, our awesome counselor of the year for elementary school. And then we even offered meals and transportation to students that needed it. So we had a good feel for our students coming back. We had 60 students every Tuesday and Thursday spread across the buildings. And we were really able to, I don't want to use the word experiment, but we were really able to implement some of those mitigation strategies on actual students during that time. So it was really, really good to be able to do that. So let's talk about asynchronous Wednesdays. This is the slide that was pulled from the slide deck that was presented by Dr. Herring on 2 Thursdays ago. And I just want to kind of just touch upon really quickly what should be happening on asynchronous Wednesdays. That asynchronous Wednesday is independent learning for students, and students should have assignments that they're supposed to do during the day. Should be posted in Google Classroom, and it can be modified based on the grade levels and based on the comfortableness of being able to navigate virtual platforms. Our staff are not sitting at home on this day. Our staff are not twiddling their thumbs. They are not taking a planning day. And I've said this from day one, that our teachers need asynchronous Wednesdays. They need it. It's very important. When we started virtual learning at the year, the goal was to improve from what happened in the spring. We know that, right? That was pandemic planning. This was actual virtual planning. I think everybody can safely say, hopefully, and I know it's not ideal, that virtual learning from August 24th to today was a little bit better than it was in March and April, okay? That is not easy to do. That takes time, that takes planning. We know that we have students that are learning in pods. We know that we have students that are learning across grade levels. When we come back and learning, we're gonna have students that are learning virtually and still learning in person. Our teachers need to work together to make sure they are delivering the same scope and sequence, which means the same timing of the lessons, the same deliverables, that all students are getting the same type of instruction, no matter if you're virtual or in person, or you're mixed in with another class or you're not with another class. So our teachers really need that days. They spend all day planning on those days. Asynchronous Wednesdays when we return are going to be for deep cleaning and sanitizing in the buildings. And then also for meal delivery for students that have elected for that. So let's talk about kind of what asynchronous looks like at Brandon. It's going to continue for this foreseeable future. I don't have an end date. So it's important to note that every Wednesday moving forward is going to be asynchronous until we hear otherwise, okay? We will pick back up with asynchronous Wednesdays on January 5th. It's a little bit of a funny start to the school year, and I admit to that. January 4th is a teacher planning day. January 5th, our students return, but it's also a half day. Don't forget, the day's over at 11:30 on January 5th because we want our teachers and we want our high school students to be able to vote. They will come back on Wednesday, but it will be asynchronous. So they will come and basically be with their teacher for a half day on Tuesday, and they will be back with their teacher virtually on Thursday. Okay, we will continue to offer specialist clubs throughout the day. If you've not had your students or your children have a chance to get on those, please do. They love it. Don't keep them on there all day because they still have work to do. I still see some of the kids that are on there from 8 to 3, but we will continue to beef those up throughout the month of January. We don't have a plan right now to continue them after our students return for in-person instruction. However, we may revisit that, but just make sure that you do have that option and that your students know about that. Please continue to show the announcements on asynchronous Wednesdays. Mr. Hudson and myself take a lot of time. We have filmed announcements every single day since March 13th. It's not easy to do, but we do it. So show the announcements on that asynchronous Wednesday. We do a whole lot around SEL. We take our time. We don't rush through them like we normally do. Sometimes they're 20 minutes, but it's really good for the kids. You can find that on the blog spot, which maybe Mr. Hudson, I see you on there. If you want to post that website in the chat box for them, they can get that. Also, when we return, asynchronous Wednesdays are going to be for building-wide disinfecting and cleaning. Before I move any further, Ms. Small, are there any burning questions in the chat box that I need to address before we move on?
No, we don't have any questions in the chat box, so we're good to keep going on.
Yeah, so I had a question around why is it so important for everybody to be learning and doing the same thing at school and learning. And I can tell you that that's best practice for teaching, that you know, we want to have an equitable learning experience for all of our students. And I'm going to talk about this in just a little bit. That doesn't matter if you're virtual or it doesn't matter if you're in person. We want to have a high quality instruction. And I will say this, if we did not do this, we would have been all over the place in our fall virtual learning. We know that we have students that, I'm just going to use teacher examples. We may have students that are in Ms. Klibanow's class and in Ms. Diamond's class and in Ms. Allman's class, but they're all together in a pod. If we didn't have asynchronous learning, then every one of those kids would be doing something different, but trying to learn together. Or they would all be on different schedules, but then trying to learn together. So we recognize the fact that our students are learning. We have students learning in Africa, South America. We have students learning with kids from other schools. We have kids that are learning in our school, but across the grade levels. We wanted to make sure that the schedules and the learning were the same, and the same thing was happening. I also want to tell you that it's very hard for our teachers to plan for the entire class. So we have what's called content teams. So I'll use second grade as an example. 2 teachers are in charge of planning all the ELA activities. 2 teachers are in charge of planning all the math activities. We have teachers in charge of planning science, and teachers in charge of planning social studies. And then they share their plans and they all teach them together. Okay, it's very important. You may have noticed that your students may be learning phonics in the morning, and there may be a video played from a teacher that is not your child's teacher. Okay, have you noticed that? That's because our teachers are planning and working together to knock out all of this work that we have to do. So it is very important that our teachers can participate in planning teams and be able to roll out their lessons so all the teachers on the grade level can teach that. All right, let's talk about our intent to return. This is a slide that came from the APS slide deck on our town hall 2 weeks ago. This is just information that we probably already know, but it just has to do with completing the form by the deadline, making sure that your selection is correct. If you have any questions or issues with your selection, you can reach out to a member of our team or our secretaries, and they can check for you, or you can continue to go back in and check, and you can see exactly where you are. But just make sure that the deadline that you completed this by December 21st. Most of us have done that. It's probably a moot point for many of us, but just important that we have that because the numbers on this dashboard are set in stone. This is how we are going to determine whether or not we are able to bring our students back safely 4 days a week for all students K-5, or whether or not we need to look at a hybrid schedule. And I'm going to tell you that we are currently exploring mitigation strategies that are going to allow our kindergarten through 5th grade students to return 4 days a week. But in order to do that, we have to have accurate numbers, and we have to have the numbers in the dashboard that are reflected on that. So that's why it's very, very important that, that we have that. All right. I do have a question that was sent to me about chances of teachers Zooming with virtual students and teaching face-to-face, or where virtual students have a new teacher. That is a great question. This is not new information, and I will just kind of share what I talked about at the last one, that our goal is to have every student have a certified teacher in front of them that is not crossing over in what we call roomies and zoomies. It is extremely difficult for our staff to teach 15 kids in a classroom while making sure they're socially distanced and safe, while also having another 7 online on the computer, moving around the classroom, mic'd up, trying to teach. If you know anybody in other clusters and other school systems or teachers, it's challenging. It is not easy, and it's doable, but it's going to take lots of training. It's going to take lots of practice, and it's not going to be perfect. We are lucky enough to have the amount of staff and the planning and the tools to allot a virtual teacher to every grade level. So students can have a virtual teacher and an in-person teacher. That will mean that if you are electing to go virtual, you will most likely not have your current homeroom teacher, because they will be teaching in person at school. So this is the intent to return that we shared the last time we met. We had 858 students in our school, and 807 had responded. This is not our in-person rate. I want to make that very clear. We do not have 807 students coming back. This is how many responded, which meant that 51 parents still did not fill out the form. We made a very conscious effort to call every one of those 51 parents and either fill the form out for them, or to make sure they understood what would be happening if they did not fill out the form. That just shows you how serious we are about making sure these numbers are accurate and reflective. Can't have any surprises coming January 19th. Everyone must know what their choice is for learning for the third quarter, starting January 19th. I do want to highlight this point. I want to tell you that any student that enrolls, do I sound glitchy, by the way? I'm getting a text message. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm sorry, I'm on my computer. Can I get a thumbs up? If you can't understand me, I'm sorry. Okay. I do want people to understand that we cannot have a flood of people returning to our school after December 21st and expecting to return for in-person instruction. You either, and this is something that we have to adhere by, that if students enroll or re-enroll after December 21st, they are defaulted to virtual learning for the third quarter of school, okay? And that's important to note. We do not have the capability to accept many more students coming into the school during that third quarter. I think it's very important that the parents who have, and the families that have stuck with us and have been at school since the beginning are able to return in person by planning for those students. And it's important to note that if students enroll during the third quarter, that they will be defaulted to virtual learning. And then for the fourth quarter, when the window opens again, you can make your selection on how you would like to learn. I put our current enrollment at the bottom. You can see we've dropped a little bit. We are at 835 students as of tomorrow. We're actually 848 today, but we are losing 13 students. This happens generally, not in the middle of the year, but we do lose students sometimes over this break. I do want to tell you that 835 students for an elementary school still makes Brandon the largest elementary school in APS, okay? But I do think it's important for parents to understand and know that that these are our school numbers. Okay, before I move on, Ms. Small or Ms. Ekper, are there any questions that I should answer that are in the chat box that maybe needs to be for the good of the group?
There was a question that we answered, but it was just about if a parent chooses to have their child come to school face-to-face and then the metrics change, are they able to go from face-to-face to virtual? Okay. And vice versa. Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you that we're not going to be able to go vice versa. So we're not going to be able to say, hey, I was virtual learning, but now I want to come back in person. That's not going to happen until the fourth quarter. I will say that if for some reason, on a case-by-case basis, if in-person instruction is not the way to go for a child or for a student, that's going to have to be on an in-person. It's a lot easier to move somebody to a virtual setting. We're not moving people from in-person to virtual, from virtual to in-person. So that's just going to have to be on an as-needed basis. We're happy to talk about that. We may have a committee to review that, but I'm not planning on forcing families to in-person learning if they don't feel comfortable with that. Let's keep rolling. So here's the $1 million slide that we all saw at the town hall, and it raised a few questions, and I understand that. The slide talks a little bit about what it means to have a 60% of or greater return for in-person instruction. We'll have flexibility to modify the instructional model. I just want to say this. We are over 60% of our current enrolled students that want to return to in-person learning. I have not put our current number up there because it's still open, and I'll share all those numbers on January 7th. But it's not a secret because, we saw last time, we saw that we were around 76, 77%. Well, that percentage has not changed really all that much. That does allow us or require us to really look at mitigation strategies that are going to allow for our students to return potentially for 4 days a week, all students. It does not mean that we have to be hybrid. But what it does mean is that we are now looking at everything under a microscope about how we can make this work for our students in school. A couple things. One is we're very lucky to have 2 buildings, okay? Because now we're not bringing back all of our students into one building. We do have 2 buildings that almost make 2 smaller schools. So that does help very much. We're also very lucky to have the amount of staff so far that are intending to return. We are also very lucky to have team members like I introduced you earlier that can put their heads together to really think through our return and learn plans to make sure that these mitigation strategies are doable for our students. Okay, so I want to talk for a second about this Atlanta capacity dashboard that we may have heard about a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to kind of highlight that for you really quickly. So the Atlanta capacity dashboard was developed by probably some really smart people at a really great college. I don't know who it was. But what we do is I have taken every single room number, I run it through the dashboard, and I'm able to see the exact square footage of every single classroom that our students learn in. I then take that square footage and I lay it out in what's called the length and width. Okay. And I put 0.1 for personal space, which basically means the students don't get any personal space, but they do get 6 feet of social distancing in a classroom, right? I give 2 feet. I give 2 feet of of unusual barrier around the wall for any shelving that may be around the wall. And then I allow for 1 teacher desk and then basically an empty row of 4. And it spits out a number. And it says that I can have this many students in this classroom in what's called an isometric grid. I've calculated this for every single one of our learning places. I've calculated this for every one of our classrooms, and I've calculated it for every one of our teachers in their intent to return. It's still a work in progress because every day we may have a couple more returning or a couple less returning, but this is one of the reasons why I need to know the exact number of every student in the classroom, because we want to make sure they can fit into a classroom that can hold this. I'm going to use an example. If this is a 5th grade classroom, we'll say, Ms. Rinkowski, and Ms. Rinkowski has 21 students returning, she would not be in this classroom. We would look at moving her classroom to another classroom that can safely hold 21 students in an isometric grid at 6 feet apart. I want to highlight this really quickly because here is the dashboard. Can I get a thumbs up if you can see the actual dashboard on my computer? And I want to show you this because this is a public dashboard. This is accessible to anybody in any community. Give me 1 second to load. It tells you who it was developed by down here, Caltech, by the way. So I go to capacity details down here at the bottom, and I'm actually going to be able to see every single Atlanta public school on here. I'm going to choose Brandon Elementary. We have 2 buildings, so primary, elementary. And I'm going to look, and I can get every single classroom with the exact square footage right here. Okay? I'll make it a little larger so you can kind of see. We're looking for really big classrooms for our classes that are intending to return more students. And I'll be honest, that's DLI. They got the largest class sizes, and they want to return. So I take this square footage, and I come back down here, and I'll go to the classroom layout, and that's where I'll type in all of my data, where it spits out how many students I can fit into that classroom with that square footage. So I want you to know that a lot of thought is going into this. And the first time we were coming around, we did not promise social distancing in classrooms. We are going to be doing that now. We understand that kids will be getting up, moving around the classrooms, and I get that. But for the most part, our students will be sitting 6 feet apart in a classroom, and that is one of the major mitigation strategies that we are focusing on to potentially allow for a 4-day return. All right. Let me present again. For some reason, it signed me out of my Google. Give me 1 second so I can get back to this. I don't know why that happened. Hang tight. While I'm doing this, do we have any questions that have popped up into the chat box?
No, Jay, we don't have any new questions in the chat.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know why this logged me out. So give me 1 second, and hopefully I can pull this back up really quickly. Hang tight. Mr. Hudson, do you have just a backup plan? Can you just make sure you have the slides available in case I have to make you a host?
Sure thing.
My Google's acting a little bit slow right now. Not sure why. I do have a question that popped up though, and I'll answer that while I'm working on this. But if I can get an admin to pull up the Google slide just in case I need to present it or have somebody do that for me.
Jay, while you're doing that, a question did pop up. The question is, how will lunch and recess be handled?
Yep, awesome. I'll talk about that. Can we see my screen again?
We can.
We're good again,
Okay, good.
Jay.
All right, good, thank you. Just have it ready, Hudson, just in case, okay? So lunch and recess, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the programming, but we have mitigation strategies for all of this, and I will just tell you once again that our goal is to protect our cohorts of students. That is to keep our students together during the day and to limit I hate to use the word cross-contamination, but that's what we're talking about with other students in other classes. So recess is handled in zones. We have 4 zones for recess. We have half the grade level eating lunch. At the same time, we have half the grade level at recess. We also have, and we have that in each building as well. Classroom transitions are finely tuned. We have a schedule for that. We have one-way hallways. We have social distancing spots. So we have really thought out all of this. We'll talk a little bit about that as we move through the slides, though. All right, so I talked about the capacity dashboard, and it does sound like we have an understanding of that. So let's talk a little bit about the health and safety guidelines. This was presented at the APS town hall, and it does talk about the health and safety guidelines for all schools. And I just want everybody to know that we are very fortunate that APS has provided us through the CARES Act funding all of the materials and supplies that we need for a safe return. So if we were to return without any community support, we would be good. We have a care room for all of our students who may be exhibiting symptoms. We have 20 disposable masks for every student who may need it. We have 2 cloth masks for students who may need it. We have gloves, we have gowns for our nurses. We have face shields for staff that need it. And we have sanitizers, automatic sanitizers in every single classroom. And we are lucky to have classrooms. All the PC classrooms have sinks and soap. The majority of our main campus ones do. The ones that don't, we actually also have portable water filling stations that we can move around the building as well for hand washing. But let's talk about kind of what some of that will look like at school. Before I get to that, I want to highlight this slide really quickly. I do think this is important. These are some of the updates that APS has done for our schools. In regard to HVAC, a $68 million upgrades. I know our HVAC was worked on. They're kicking it on earlier. They're turning it off later. They're pumping in fresh air more often, and they're upgrading the filters. Water, just so you know, we have 2 water filling stations at every building that our students are going to be required to use. We're not using water fountains. So water bottles will be something that we want our students to bring in. In case you don't know, since our water fountains were not used for so long, every school underwent what was called Legionella testing. I learned a lot about Legionella, by the way. I can tell you all about it. Legionella is a bacteria that can sit in still water, that when it breathed in, not swallowed, but inhaled, it can be dangerous. So we went through Legionella testing, and there's no Legionella at our school, just so everybody knows. Buildings and buses right here. We have 2 fogging machines that APS provided. So we fog all of our classrooms right now after intervention sessions in any high use areas, twice daily wipe downs of all of the handles and doors. I love seeing our custodians just going through and wiping down every handle in the building twice a day when literally nobody's in the building, but they're doing it. And that just shows you that we're following those guidelines. We do have 60% capacity. And if we're over 60%, we're implementing social distancing and mitigation strategies to make that possible. And we're still not able to rent our fields or our buildings out for any outside visitors. So you can kind of see some of the mitigation strategies that APS has put in place as well. PPE on the people. They are developing a comprehensive COVID-19 testing strategy with more information that'll be rolled out soon. And we are looking at our class sizes very closely. Now at Brandon, this is some of the things that we're doing, and I just want everybody to be aware. You are not going to get all the answers today. I want you to know that. I also want you to know that we literally just submitted our reopening plan for review yesterday. We have still not met with our teachers. And I want you to know it's very important that our teachers continue to focus their attentions and efforts on what they're doing right now. And that's virtual teaching. We are not mailing it in. We want to be the best teachers that we can be for our virtual students right now. So we have told our teachers, keep doing what you're doing. We will talk when we return, and we will give you the plans when we return. So what we're going to be doing at the school, first and foremost, are health screenings. We need our parents to do every morning. You're going to do a health screening on your child, which basically just checking them to make sure that they're not exhibiting any symptoms or signs of illness. If they are, we ask they don't come to school. We will be doing a temperature checks for every single student that's returning to our building every single day. This is going to be difficult to do, but we have a plan in place for this. And we have thermometers, and we have logs, and we have everything in place to screen every one of our students. And then that's for our bus riders, our carpool riders, and our walkers every day at both buildings. For safety, masks are mandatory. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Every student has to have a face covering that's allowable by the student handbook for dress code, which is a cloth face covering. We have hand washing and sanitizing stations throughout the building and in every classroom. We set classroom capacities based on the dashboard. We have 2 care rooms at each building that are supervised by a staff member and our nurses. I'll say it again. We have 2 full-time nurses at Morris Brandon, which is extremely, extremely awesome to have during this time. We are reducing movements of students. So our students will be in the classroom a lot. I do want you to say that in-person instruction will be just that, okay? It is not our goal to have our students come in and sit on a computer all day long. It's not our goal to have our students come in and not be, and not feel like they're in school. We want to have the best school experience that we can do during a pandemic. So there's going to be some slight changes, and it's not going to typically resemble a typical school day, but the kids will be in class, and they'll be with their teacher, and they'll be with their friends, and they'll be with their classmates. But there won't be a ton of movement. So lunch and breakfast and lunch is eaten in the classrooms. Recess is outside every day. We have a phased-in approach for specials. We have students that can move to the gym for PE. We do have a plan for foreign language and for art and for music. And we'll share that as we move down the road through our town halls as well. We talked about recess zones, and we talked about asynchronous Wednesdays and what's happening on that. Building access, we've actually increased our access points for students so we don't bottleneck or funnel into the building. Every building, I say every building, we have 2 buildings. Each building has 3 entrances for our students. Our primary center's got a kindergarten entrance. It's got a 1st grade entrance. It's going to have a 2nd grade entrance. Our 3 through 5 has got a 3rd grade entrance, a 4th grade entrance, and a 5th grade entrance. And that's for car riders and walkers and bus riders. So for example, at main campus, if you're a car rider, you're going to get out of your car. You're going to get a temperature screening. We're going to log it into a Google Doc. You're going to go into the courtyard and you're going to enter the door that's labeled for your grade level, and you're going to go straight to your classroom. Breakfast will be served on the hallway. They'll get their breakfast. They can go eat in the classroom. And then we have bus at the main campus. If you're getting off your bus, we have an entrance for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, even getting off the bus. So we don't all funnel into one area. Primary center, a lot more spread out. We have a bus entrance through the gym, and then we have carpools and walker entrances through all 3 of our entrances at the primary center. So we really thought through this. We have a staff member who'll be taking a temperature check, and we'll have somebody to log it at every single entrance. We are limiting visitors. We're not having visitors in our building right now past the main entrance. We don't want to keep everyone out of our school, but we just cannot have visitors past the main entrance of our schools currently. Okay, any questions that I have around this from any of the APs on there, Miss Small or Miss Ekper, anything that I can touch upon?
No, we don't have any new questions, so you can keep moving forward.
Okay. I do just want to remind everybody that the health screenings really do start right when your child wakes up in the morning. Okay, really, really, really important that if a student is exhibiting any signs of symptoms or sickness, just be smart and really determine whether that child is going to be effective at school that day, or if most likely they're going to have a temperature when we check it, or if we're going to have them be calling you to pick them up. We'll have a lot more information around that as we move down the hallway, but it starts with you, our parents. I want to talk for a second about some of this remediation. And the question, and this was put out there by APS, and we're going to have a lot more information around this. As you know, our school system does what's called a Power Up or Summer Up program, which is done over the summer. And as our clusters come together, we pool our funds, and we each serve about 30 to 50 students at each one of our schools at a host site. It's going to look a little bit differently this year. We're still waiting on some of the details, and the details for that are going to be really around interventions for the summers, 5 days a week with a focus on literacy and mathematics, but also whole child wellness. Be on the lookout for that information if you're interested in having your child participate in interventions, summer intervention programs and academic recoveries. I don't have a ton of information around this, but I really love that APS is rolling this program out. It's also a 2-year, multi-year program implementation, so it's not just going to be this summer. But continue to check the APS website for updates on that, and we'll be able to roll that out when we get some information around that. I did get a question on here around I had a question around, would we ever consider doing a hybrid model with the amount of students that we have? And I'll say this, A hybrid is always an option, but our focus right now is to look at mitigation strategies to allow for a 4-day return. We feel that having 2 buildings with the capacity, with our student numbers, that we're able to do this. Yes, social distancing will be enforced, and we feel like we're able to do this. So I don't, so we're going to continue to look at these mitigation strategies to do that. So right now, yes, a hybrid model is on the table, but we are looking first and foremost for a 4-day return if we're able to do that with the numbers that we have. And then what is the process for bus riders with checking tents? It looks like we got some information on that. I have a parent who's, and Tamara, we talked about this, is having proactive COVID testing in the district, and I'm glad that they're looking at that. That's a good idea. And then it looks like our APs are answering some of the other questions on there. I do want to say about that potential to do a hybrid if we have it. I just want to say this. If you have any concerns about your children being in person or being learning, whether it be 2 days a week or whether it being 4 days a week or whether it being wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, in-person instruction may not be the best bet for you. I would tell you to opt for virtual learning for the next 9 weeks, because we're going to do everything we can to get our students in the building and to absolutely do it safely and to mimic what a typical day would look like. And I will just tell you, if you have concerns about the amount of students returning, or any safety concerns or any concerns about wearing a mask, I would encourage you to opt for virtual learning for the next 9 weeks, where they will be getting a great instruction by having their own students will have their own virtual teacher, which I think is really important on the equity standpoint. So let's talk about some understandings and agreements. You guys can read these on your own. This is going to be really important, but this is going to take a community effort. Okay. While yes, it may seem like parents are stepping back now and sort of releasing some of that control back to the school, it's really going to be important that our parents are buying into our safety protocols and procedures and checking and health screening their students at home, making sure that they are practicing safe guidelines outside of school, and making sure that you're communicating actively with our staff and myself and our nurses should any of our students be exposed or need to self-quarantine. There's going to be a whole lot around COVID and safety and procedures. And I want you to know that that's going to be coming at a later town hall. It's most likely going to be coming on the January 21st one before we come back, because we're still waiting on a lot of guidelines around contact tracing, around quarantining, around how long you need to be out, around staff quarantining if they have to. But I will say this, if we can keep our classes and we can keep our classes together and limit the cross exposure of our classes, that the goal would be that if we have to self-quarantine a student, it would either be a student or a class and not the entire school. And that's our goal, to do that. So we'll be getting a lot more information to you around that once we know our numbers and once we get a little bit more guidance from APS, but there'll be no secrets around that. We talk about the mask wearing. And then we know that we're not making any exceptions to any of this. I shared this the last time we met. I really like this. We put together some essential agreements for our students. We are an IB school, and when essential agreement is something that we all agree on, that we all agree to do. I really liked students have a pledge on here, staff have a pledge on here, our community has a pledge on here. And it talks about our shared responsibilities at the bottom. We will continue to kind of highlight this to let our students know about this. We'll put it up in the buildings. We'll put it on the announcements. But this is something that we all sort of agree to do if we decide to send our students back to in-person learning. And it has to do with ensuring our students wear masks or avoiding travel whenever necessary, adhering to the directives of Morris Brandon if I or my child needs to be quarantined or isolated. Not allowing my child to attend face-to-face classes if he or she is exhibiting symptoms, participating in district contact tracing, and then following guidance from the CDC and Department of Public Health. So just want you to know that this is out there, and we're going to continue to kind of refine and look at it and to make sure our parents and our students know this, because essential agreements are important, and we have them for everything in our school: hallway movement, cafeteria, behavior, attendance. So why not for safety and mitigation? Before I move on, do I have any questions that I can touch upon for the good of the group? Ms. Small?
Yes, we do have a couple of questions we can review with with everyone. There's a parent who's been emailing you, and she just wants to know, the district is being proactive about COVID testing and screening. Do you have any updates about that?
Yes, so I don't yet. I do know that the district is putting together a comprehensive COVID testing plan, but that will most likely be rolled out after the new year. So I do not have information on that yet.
An additional question, do we know yet what the exposure protocol will look like? For example, will whole class have to quarantine or just those immediately surrounding the child?
Yeah, so right now, an outbreak is defined as 2 or more COVID cases. But to be completely honest with you, we're still refining that. If a child is exposed to COVID-19, we'll alert the nurse, who will alert me, or you can direct it to your teacher or to me. We will let health services know, and they will send a letter to the classroom, and then the APS will give us guidance on what needs to happen based on that. So Atlanta Public Schools contact tracing will really tell me whether or not the class needs to quarantine, if just the child does, if there was close proximity, and who that is. We are still refining our protocols for that. So just stay tuned as we get a little bit more information, and that will all be in our safety handbook that we're going to give to our parents and our students as well.
And there was one more question related to that. If a class has to quarantine, would siblings from that class have to quarantine as well?
That's a good question. That's going to be up to Atlanta Public Schools, who's going to have to let us know who is in close contact with those students. I would think that most likely a secondary contact, meaning that I'm in a class with Ms. Small, and Ms. Small may have been exposed to somebody with COVID, so our class has to shut down. But if I'm not experiencing any symptoms or any signs, then my sibling can still continue to go to school. We are waiting on guidance on that. It really is going to be a case-by-case basis. And we'll make sure that we get all of that information out to you in January, well prior to us returning to in-person learning. Just a couple other questions I had. I had a question about the Hive coming back if we return to in-person. I figured that question would come. From my understanding, after-school programs can still continue when we return. They may have to limit the number of students that they have. And they're going to have to probably present what their COVID plan is to myself and to the district. But we understand that our students cannot all be picked up by 2:15 every single day, and that we are going to need to have some after-school programs. So I'll get some more guidance on that. But my understanding is that the Hive will pick back up when we return to in-person learning. Okay. I also have a question about students that are home because of quarantine or possible symptoms. Can they learn virtually on these days? Great question. We were talking about that right before this plan, and we are working on a plan for students that need to self-quarantine, which is the 7 to 10 day guidelines right now if they're not experiencing symptoms, and we'll let you know what that is. We are not looking at moving kids in and out of the virtual classroom because those teachers are going to have enough on their plate to serve those students. So it would either be an independent learning type situation or a Zooming with the teacher situation. And we're looking at options for that. All right. If a whole class has to quarantine, including the teacher, yes. The class can still learn virtually as long as the teacher's learning virtually as well. And I do want to tell you, we have schedules for grade levels, in-person and virtual learning, that very much mirror each other. So there is a virtual schedule that students will follow, okay? I do want you to know that the in-person schedule and virtual schedules will all follow the Atlanta Public School timelines, meaning that beginning January 19th and February 1st, whether you're virtual or in person, the school day will start at 8 a.m. and will end at 2:15 p.m. There may be some independent practice in there for virtual students, but just so you know, we're not doing the staggered start anymore because we don't necessarily need that for that 8:35 start time. They'll start at 8 a.m. virtually. By the way, that staggered start time has saved us on many occasions this year when power went out, when Google Classrooms were down, when trees were down. We were able to get ahead of all of our 3rd through 5 options. So that actually worked really well.
Oh, shit.
Unmute everybody. And I'm going to unmute. Okay. Hopefully everybody can still hear me. Please continue to keep yourselves muted. We are nearing our end, so let's keep moving. So just in conclusion, all of our students will return for virtual instruction on January 5th. please make sure you have that noted. We did have a typo. That was my fault in the email. I said January 4th. It is January 5th. You will log in at 8 a.m. or 8:35, depending on your grade level, and the day will conclude at 11:30 a.m. on that day. I want you to remember that community spread is not the only determining factor for a return for face-to-face learning. Demonstrating proper mitigation strategies are also going to help limit the amount of spread within the school and allow for our students to return face-to-face. So we've looked at our capacity dashboards. We've talked about our building entrances. We've talked about limiting movement. We've talked about lunch and recess and eating. And we're confident that the mitigation strategies that we have in place are going to be great. We are exploring mitigation strategies that would allow for a 4-day-a-week return for our students. I think that's important to note. We understand that a hybrid model it may not be ideal to all of our families nor our teachers. We also, there's some concerns around even mitigation strategies with a hybrid model, with coming and going into school. It also would make our teachers have to teach roomies and zoomies, like we talked about, which is something that we've never done and is not easy to do. So we're confident that with our social distancing in the classrooms and our mitigation strategies that we can explore a 4-day-a-week option. If that is not the chance, if that's not what's happening, then we will look at a hybrid model moving forward. Site-based intervention was great. We were able to really put some of those into use. Classroom capacity we talked about. And I do want you to know that on January 7th, we'll be able to share what our dashboard numbers are, how many kids will be virtual versus in person, how many kids will be in your child's class with you. And we're excited to share all that information because we are excited to have students in the building. We are. This is something that we feel is valuable and important, and we feel like we're going to make the effort to make that happen. We feel like Atlanta Public Schools is making the effort to make that happen, and we appreciate their support as always. And I just want you to know that we're doing everything we can to make this work for our teachers, our students, and our families. And it's not always easy to balance all three, but with the team that we have, the school and the community that we have, we feel like that we can do this and we can do it well. There's 65 days from February 19th to the end of the school year. And but who's counting, right? I don't know what that means. No, I'm just kidding. But there's 65 days. We know that, and we're confident that we can get our students back in the building, and we can make a school day work during a pandemic and make it look as close to possible as a typical school day. So that's really all I have. I'll be able to answer just a couple questions in here. I do just want to remind you that for our larger classes, we have a lot of space at Brandon. We have lots of big classrooms that aren't being used. So we are looking at teachers moving spaces. And it's something that it just takes a lot of planning, and just understand that the planning process, that none of this is happening in person right now, that every piece of planning we're doing is literally through a computer, which makes everything a little bit more difficult. So, but we can do it. We know we can. We've got an awesome team. And I'll just take a couple questions from our admin if we do have anything. So Ms. Small, if you do have anything for us, let me know.
You just kind of touched upon this, but a parent was asking about details for DLI classes. And once we return, if there are any students that choose to be virtual, will they do roomies and zoomies?
Yes. Let me talk about that for DLI because, and I did gloss over this, 25% of our school is DLI. So apologies if I don't always provided the most attention that I should. We don't have the ability to teach DLI virtually, primarily because Spanish is tough to find. It's tough to hire. So the plan is right now to have our DLI virtual students to be clumped into one class, and they will follow their in-person teacher during the day. So that would be the only class right now that we have in mind that would need to do roomies and zoomies if a DLI student is opting for virtual learning. We will have all the supports in place. We do have DLI paraprofessionals that will be virtual that can support that, but they just cannot be the primary teacher based on teacher certifications. So just so you know, the small amount of DLI students that will be virtual will be virtually with the students that are also in person. got a lot of thank yous, so thank you to that. And if we don't have any other questions, I'll leave it open just for about another 3 or 4 minutes. So if Dwight or Tamika or Fume want to come off mute and share anything, please do. I want to give so many thank yous, but I got to give a shout out to our PTA and our foundation. They have just been amazing. I do want to put this out there that that foundation and the supports that you all have given to our community are going to help with this mitigation strategy. We have met with several vendors about the potential of purchasing desk partitions just to make our mitigation strategies even better. So we are looking at purchasing trifolds for every single student in our building that's returning for in-person learning. So now not only will they be in a classroom that can fit them, they'll be in a classroom that they can be 6 feet apart and also have partitions, clear partitions, so students can eat and not have to worry about, anything else that accompanies that. So thank you to the foundation. We're working on that. And also just to our PTA for just being generally awesome all around. So thank you guys for that. All right. Any other questions, admin, that we have? Okay.
No questions, Jay. Just a lot of thank yous and appreciation for our team and for the teachers.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys. Don't forget to get your kids on our dance today at 11:45. Don't forget tomorrow we are ending at 11. And then we'll be doing our drive-by from 12 to 1 p.m. So please swing by. We'll have most of our homeroom teachers spread out on that sidewalk, willing to say bye to all the kids. So make it festive. Really, really try to just unwind over break. I know it's not easy. Keep it safe, but turn those computers off. Don't worry about what's happening in January. I told the teachers the same thing. I won't be sleeping. I'll be working 24 hours a day, but I get paid the big bucks to do that. So that's why. I'll take a little bit of time to myself though, just kidding. And we'll come back in January ready to tackle 2021. And if you look, you can see a tunnel over there and there's a little bitty light coming through that tunnel. I think for the first time, see a little bit of hope. So let's do it. All right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Fume, Tamika, Dwight, for all your help. Ms. Lamb, I see you on there, for all of our parents, for all of our teachers. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. This is recorded. We'll post it on our website. And if you need anything, just let us know. Okay? All right. Take care.
Have a great day.
Have a happy holiday and happy early new year.
Just reading some of the final comments on here. Who do we have over there? David?
Hi.
Say Jackson.
Jackson.
Yeah.
How you doing, Jackson?
I'm doing good. How are you, Mr. Bland?
I'm doing great. Are you going to be on our school dance today at 11:45?
Yes.
Okay, do it. I'm going to be sure to give you a special shout out. Okay?
Okay.
All right, buddy.
So you got to get back to math.
Gotta get back to math.
Got to get back to math.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
All right, how did it go in that chat box?
It's great. Just I'm gonna log off for the
Yeah.
dance.
Yeah, okay, let's log out. Hudson, I'm coming right over to PC right now, okay?
All right.
All right, bye y'all.
Bye.